you've met Bret Easton Ellis. What is it like to hang out with him?
Incredible. It's everything I would have ever wanted. He's eccentric. He's super smart, very perceptive, and I'll never forget what he said to me. We had a meeting to talk about writing, and I left, and then I hear the door open back up, and he goes, "Lukas," and I turn around, and he goes, "Try to be happy." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Just try to be happy."
Lukas Gage, welcome to One Nightstand.
Sam Leach, thank you for having me.
What a treat.
What a treat indeed.
A treat to get you on the record.
I love it. I'm so excited.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to ask you about any books. I'm just going to sit here and, just
stare at me.
Yeah, and just make you tell me that you love me and
I
stuff
love you.
in perpetuity, that I have this always on camera.
Sam Leach. You can always save this whenever you're questioning it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Gonna need.
Love Sam Leach.
But we are here today to talk about books, and your memoir in particular.
Amazing.
But first, were you always a big reader growing up?
I was a huge reader growing up. The only way I could get my dad's attention, I think, was for reading. I think that was what I was rewarded on. If I read a lot of books, and he was an overachiever, went to Cornell at 14. So if I read books, I was always rewarded with going to the movies, and then a real obsession unfolded.
What were some of those early books you read for his attention?
Books. The series of unfortunate events, Harry Potter was big for me. I loved A Wrinkle in Time. I remember I loved all Shel Silverstein books. Not anything crazy, but you know what? They hold up. Some of them really hold up. A Wrinkle in Time holds up.
Like, what else are you supposed... You're not supposed to read War and Peace at 5 years old. Like, that's...
I want to say that I did.
I mean, lying is a theme of this book.
Lying is a big theme of this book. Oh, you know who was a huge person? Ned Vizzini.
I don't know who that is.
Be More Chill. It's kind of a funny story.
Oh, I've heard of... I don't... Yeah. Wait, that's a...
It's a book. They made Be More Chill into a play.
That's what it was. Was that on Broadway recently?
It was.
Or something?
Yeah, a couple years ago. Yeah. It was all about you could take a pill and it teaches you how to be cool.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You would have definitely liked that as a kid.
Loved it.
So as much as you were a big reader, you were also a diarist as a child.
Yes.
It's interesting. I was thinking a lot about, you don't have like a formal writing background, despite being a very prolific writer of scripts, and now your first book. But you were writing fiction from a young age because you would lay in the bath and write tall tales. Yeah, so tell us about those early attempts at fiction.
I think I truly was very, very bored, and the creativity wasn't being put to good use. So I would just lie to my book, lie to my I already called it a book. Lie to my diary to just make my life seem more entertaining for I think just myself. But yeah, I think that love for telling stories and having a narrative that was my own perspective on what reality was very important to me. I love it. I mean, now looking back, reading those entries, they're very funny, but also a little sad that little Lukas had to lie about having horses in a big mansion and was on American Idol.
Had SARS,
touched a bird and got SARS and had to stay home from school. But, the real story wasn't as interesting, I don't think.
I mean, for those who will soon read this book, I think actually the real story was much more interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Who are some of your favorite poets?
My favorite poets, I like Kat Cohen.
We love
Olivia
Kat Cohen.
Gatwood. I love Bo Burnham. I think his poetry book is amazing.
I didn't know he had one.
He has a really good poetry book. I think it's called Egghead.
Okay.
I mean, Lana Del Rey's poetry book is so good.
It's great.
I've read it, and I have it on Audible with the music with Jack Antonoff, and God, it's good.
It's really
Violet
good.
Bent Over the Grass, baby.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a celebrity memoir that you haven't read at this point now. So yeah, tell me about just completely diving in, and which we're going to get to talking about Down the Drain by Julia Fox. But aside from that one, which were some others that had a big impact on you as you started to write?
I was big on fiction till I was probably in my 20s, and then the love for nonfiction became a thing, and a love for memoirs.
Yeah.
I find them so affirming to read from these people that I look up to and admire and see where I relate and connect to them. And I think you asked what my favorite ones were?
Favorite, or ones that you felt really influenced the writing of this book?
I would say the two that come to mind are Demi Moore's book,
Yeah,
which
I love that one.
I love how raw and open she is, and Julia Fox. Julia Fox is down the drain. It's so good.
They really are both no holds barred. You talk about with your book is that, like, I mean, Demi Moore spans more of her career just because by virtue of the fact that
a career.
Well, she's also has years on you,
Yes.
but what's most fascinating the childhood.
Yeah.
Like, these are really, I mean, Julia Fox, when I think about her book Down the Drain, which I adored as well, it's the chapters about, like, her, it's not Kanye I think about, it's about, it's Ace, like her awful, like, drug dealer, high school boyfriend. It's 100%. Like, it's really, the childhoods are so compelling.
I think that's where I connect to these books the most. I think the areas where people have it all figured out and they're talking about their achievements, and that's all interesting and cool, but that I find far less interesting where they struggled and where they talk about their shortcomings and their failures. To me, that's the most relatable and the most interesting. And there's definitely some memoirs that start off with how great their life is and how much they've achieved, and that just feels so hard to relate to, and also just I don't think it's interesting to have someone talk about how they have it all together. I like someone finding out and still finding out, and I think both of those books, Demi and Julia, are still open about, they're still trying to figure it out. It's not a perfect cohesive story on either of them. It can be jarring at times, but I think that's life, and people's lives that are messy and chaotic is more interesting.
I think also what I admire about Julia's book and Demi's as well is that, like, the healing isn't linear.
Yeah.
Demi gets sober very young and then relapses and learns from it, and I think she's in a really good place right now, as is Julia, when the book ends, but I don't think either of them feel that the healing is done or that they couldn't slip back into anything.
Right, like a redemption arc.
Totally.
It feels more like it's linear in a way that I like. I do like a book to have a beginning, middle, and end, and chronologically I'm kind of by the books. I don't like too much of timelines being out of order.
Sure.
But it still doesn't feel like a perfect arc and a perfect story. It's like you said, like, they mess up, they get it together, they mess up, and that's interesting to me, and that's life, and we're always changing, and they're constantly changing. I'm a different person truly every day, as you know, being my friend, and they're honest about that, and that's just refreshing to read from a memoir.
I was going back and reading old interviews of Julia's ahead of this, and there was a great interview she'd done with a writer, Jessica Testa, at the Times, and who had interviewed her during Kanye of it all. And I guess Julia said something to her that she then quoted back in this interview, where she's like, Kanye is actually not the most interesting thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people will come to your book with wanting to read about the viral video, your short-lived marriage. However, in my opinion, that is not the most interesting part. And I guess I'm kind of curious about, you've been getting some early reviews of people being like, no, it's the early stuff.
I think to me that's the best compliment. I think when selling the book, you want to lean into those splashy headlines, and there is resistance in writing both of those stories, because I'm like, I feel like I've probably said too much about both of those things, and I'm exhausted talking about it, and so to have other people connect to the stories that are more personable and more and not public information, and find that way more fascinating than the Hollywood bullshit of it all, that's the best compliment I could possibly get from it. And I think with Julia and Demi's book, people have a preconceived notion that it's just going to be about Kanye, or it's just going to be about the Ashton stuff. And to me, in both of those books, and I mean this with all love and respect, those were the least interesting parts of both of those books. I liked hearing the nuances and the introspection on what they were feeling at the time, but to me, I like hearing about the earlier parts of their career.
Something I really liked that I think Julia talks about having wrestled with a lot, and I felt this way writing my own book and being the the
Your book's so
narrator.
good, by the way.
Thank
I have
you.
to say, the list is amazing.
Thank you. Is like when you're writing about other people in your life and you want to present yourself as a truly, valuable person, like how much of the burden of like mistakes did you like put on yourself versus like how, like wanting to balance showing that I'm someone who fucks up versus, other people who are making mistakes in this book. And I think she talks about that a lot, especially she has friends who die and she's still here and she's battled addiction, both like survivor's guilt, but also showing that she, making herself culpable in the same way. And I guess I was kind of curious how that influenced how you reckoned with that in your book.
Well, Julia says something in an interview that I don't know if it influenced my book, but she always says something like, don't let the assholes win, but I've also been the asshole. And like that quote is, she said it in passing and I'm just like, that is so true.
So good.
Like we've all been the asshole. We've all been the villainous person at times. And I think that just both of those books as well, Julia's never trying to be the hero of her story. And she never also plays the victim, I don't think.
No,
either.
I don't think so.
She is very responsible for her downfalls and her part of the situation and any negative situation that she's in. But also, I find that really attractive too. Like ownership of everything, the bad stuff especially. Ownership of your worst qualities to me is the most attractive trait in somebody.
Do you feel you always had that, or that's something you've really built towards?
No, I was completely resistant towards any constructive feedback ever. I would always, fight back and say, it wasn't my fault. That was, a byproduct of whatever they did to me. But that's just not true. I've been wrong, and I've been a bad friend and a bad partner and a bad family member, but I've also been an amazing one, and I've also been an amazing lover and an amazing friend. But I can acknowledge that I'm a bit of a contradiction, and I think both of those things, I have to acknowledge both aspects of myself and be forthcoming about it and say, this was my fault. And ultimately the best feedback I get from people, my friends and family that read it, is a sense that they understand me more.
Yeah, I mean, Julia writes about in the book her diagnosis with borderline personality, and I think that was my favorite thing to read, is just how beautifully you captured this experience of living with the disorder, and also just you're aware, like, how you just, like, living with it but not letting it win, but also the times that it does, you just really, I just felt like it completely was the key that unlocked my understanding of you.
Thank you. I feel like it was the key for myself, just mapping out my whole life and seeing why, I think there was a lot of shame and judgment of why I'd acted the way that I'd acted before, why I had blown up a relationship. And I think when I just put it like a timeline and I could piece things together I'm like, oh, no wonder I was impulsive. No wonder I was crying out for attention. No wonder I was, reactive and being a selfish person. It made me have more empathy and understanding for myself. You can see yourself in it, and you see like, oh, I'm not the only person who feels that way. Yeah. And I think that's the coolest thing and the hope when you write a book is like you're not alone in feeling like these things that you never want to say out loud, but you have another person put it to words. I think it's beautiful. And I think I really relate also, not to go on a tangent, the thing that I loved about Julia's book is, and the thing I didn't expect from it, is where all these female friendships and these female kind of like mother figures showed up throughout her whole entire life. I would never expect that from a Julia Fox book.
Yeah. I read the library book by Susan Orlean, which you also brought today. You really, like, there are parallels with the character who burns down the library and you. He's a very blonde, gay arsonist, which, who loves tall tales and is prone to exaggeration. Tell me what made you want to talk about this one.
This book is really interesting because I think at first glance, it's not a book I would normally want to read. And I'm just being completely blunt about that.
Okay. Fair enough. I think what's really cool about anything Susan Orlean does is that it's sort of like Russian nesting dolls. Like on the surface, it's a story about a library, but it's also about a fire, and it's also about this man who may or may not have burned it down. It's also a story of her and her mother. Like it truly, like, Susan Orlean contains multitudes. Like,
yeah, talking about Harry Peak, this crazy blonde nightmare.
Yeah.
It was interesting the way that she writes about this troubled character who has a hard time keeping his alibi straight. Is just so entertaining and interesting, and the way that she connects that with a historical event that you don't know much about, and does it in a way that's still compelling and interesting. I just think that the melding of the true crime, the biography, the history of it all, but also making it just like an interesting story where you're connected to all these characters makes it just such a good read.
And you had a moment where you were attempting to play Harry in the on-screen version, and were in chat and in discussions with Susan. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was talking to Susan for a bit about it. I hope that there's still a way that we can adapt this into an incredible story on screen, because I can see it clearly. But yeah, there was a moment in the pandemic where we were actively putting it together with a production company, and then it lost a little bit of its momentum, but it's not dead yet. We're gonna bring that fire back to the story.
You are a screenwriter as well. You've had one film made. I remember asking you how you learned to write screenplays, and didn't you took master class?
I just became a member of master class, and it's an unlimited thing, so I listened to all of them. But I think I would say the biggest way I learned from screenwriting is just reading the screenplays that I love and watching the screenplay and reading, or watching the movie while I'm reading the scrapplay at the same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's how I kind of taught myself how to do it. I would say, of course, the master classes were helpful, but I think that was the biggest teaching moment for me. And same with, I think, doing the memoirs, just reading every single nonfiction celebrity memoir out there and seeing the things that I connected to, the things I liked, the things I didn't like. That was kind of my training.
Tell me, like, your writing routine. You've been known to pull over on a freeway and start writing on your laptop. Like, you will write anywhere, anytime.
Pulling over in my Honda Fit on the 405 to write a chapter. I think I would love to say that I'm a writer who has a routine, that I write 5 pages a day and that's my thing. But I feel like my process maybe is getting it all out, just the worst version possible, even if it's with no commas or every grammar mistake possible, which I'm very guilty of. I think my editor said she's never seen more commas in the wrong places in her lifetime. But then once I start that first draft of it, it's just throwing everything up. And it doesn't matter. I can't judge it. I can't go back and edit. I can't try to fix. I can't think about grammar, spelling mistake. That's just out of my head, and I just have to trust my instinct and the first impulse. And then for me, writing is just rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and doing it over and over and over and over again and cleaning it up. And the biggest lesson I had with this was how much different it is being read out loud. You know, how that was huge for me. Is how I had a friend, my friend's mother, read it out loud on FaceTime, and then reading it out loud and my voice on Audible was huge.
Susan Orlean has a new book coming out, Joyride, which is about, this has memoir components to it, but this is really, it feels like her writing manual. Like, it's the story of her writing life. And she talks about something that I really related to in it, is that she talks about her writing ambition.
Yes.
How, like, she's constantly signing herself up for things that, like, there's a moment early on in the book where she talks about how she was asked to profile Macaulay Culkin for Esquire. Yeah. And instead she's like, no, I want to profile a 10-year-old kid. Like, I want to find one and just, like, write a cover story on him. And then she's like, a week later, like, why the fuck didn't I just profile Macaulay Culkin? Yeah. But I think that's something I really see with you. Like, no matter what, well, I just think, like, you always do, whether it's with writing or acting or your schedule or not sleeping, you are always doing the hardest version of whatever you can be doing.
The most insane version possible. Yeah. I can connect with that. I think I'm like, why didn't I just make it easy for myself? Why didn't I just abide by, like, a schedule and a thing? But I think that's just not where the best creative work comes in. Can we talk about the quote that she has in the book about wanting attention as a writer, seeking the external validation?
Yeah, I texted it to you. Let's see. Yeah. I feel like it's...
I have it. Disappointment and frustration are a constant. Most writers yearn for approval and acclaim, so among them you are guaranteed to encounter competitiveness and jealousy. Being a writer requires having the confidence to think you have something to say, but is almost always linked with the neediness of wanting an audience to hear and approve of it. The mix can be brutal.
What does that mean to you?
That's exactly how I feel, articulated in the most beautiful way. It's that push and pull of writing. I mean, you know what it's like. I feel like you have to not have that inner critic or not have that audience awareness while you're in the middle of writing, but it's hard not. I mean, I'm a needy person, and I want approval, and I want praise, and I want people to tell me I did a good job, but I think also that is the thing that can ruin your art.
It's really hard to be, I'm speaking for myself now, so validation dependent and needing so many compliments, and yet continuously putting my ideas and thoughts out there. It's like, it feels so self-flagellating, but I also don't know what else I would do.
No, I feel the same way. I thrive on people telling me I did a good job and praise, but I think also that was something I had to silence, or try to silence. It's always going to be there. It's a part of myself, but that part of me that wants to be a good student, or the part of me that feels bad that I wasn't a good student in school, so I want to make up for it. And I want the editors to tell me what a good job I did and how beautiful that piece of writing was, and in the other sense of them pushing back on some areas of don't write that or don't say that, and having to trust my instinct and be like, no, this is why we need to put this in here. Mm-hmm. And I understand and respect your opinion because they know what they're doing, but at the same time, if I'm only looking for their approval and their praise and not trusting why I had that instinct to put it in there, it's gonna affect it. There's some crazy stuff in there.
For sure.
There's some crazy metaphors in there.
Name the one that you say it with your chest.
I would say there's a line about a Nantucket sex worker and...
No, I think a whore. I think you just said salt...
No, it's something about a Nantucket whore with a saltwater taffy analogy.
That doesn't land.
Quite make sense or land, but I stand by it.
Live your truth.
Sometimes I found myself just kind of messing with them by the end of it and seeing if they would catch on some of the most insane things I had put in there, and they didn't.
And let's see who's the joke. Who the joke is on.
It might be everyone's favorite metaphor. I still stand by that one.
I know you do.
I know you hate it, but
the next book we have is one that we also will, much like the saltwater taffy analogy, we will debate on.
Okay,
The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Tell me why you love this book so much, as I'm a massive Donna Tartt fan. Secret History is one of my favorite books of all time. I think she is probably the most incredible living writer we have today. I agree. Don't love this book.
So you would say The Secret History is better than The Goldfinch?
100%.
I disagree. I love The Secret History.
So tell me.
First of all, I think that the way that Donna talks about grief and loneliness in The Goldfinch is just so beautifully written. The sensory details that she talks about, I'm a sucker for that. I love sensory details. The way that she can really help you visualize and see the whole entire story in your head. I just connected with the protagonist of that story so much too.
It's so interesting because I'm, as someone who does really know you, I'm picturing you connecting with that, but you're not an orphan. You have so many family members,
it's not that aspect of it.
I know. I'm just thinking about how you as Theo Decker, but I'm you have so many brothers, and
I know.
There's just people around you at all times growing up, but I do feel like you have this I just see you fancying yourself as this character.
I think it's more of the wish that I was this outsider character that was sent from place to place and didn't have a home and felt like he was always on the road. That part of me, I think I connect with wanting to be like that. What was his friend's name when he goes to the Vegas?
Boris. You're a Boris.
I'm more of a Boris.
That's so,
for sure.
Yes,
I feel like Boris is really me.
So if we could do
areas we agree on, you love that part of the
book. I
book.
love the Vegas one, but I'm saying also I know Donna Tartt will never make another movie of any project of hers, and there'll never be another Goldfinch, but I want just a standalone, just Boris, just
Yeah.
the whole thing. He, you know, the very debaucherous, troublemaking Russian bad influence best friend who he's constantly doing drugs with and blackout making out, hooking up with,
Yes.
and just
Taking acid in the desert with.
yeah, and I think that's, you know, it does tie into like what I like about I love stories of people behaving badly, and The Secret History is just that encapsulated. I mean, they're, you know, having bacchanals and then murdering their friend and like that. So I think to me, and I also, so I was thinking about it ahead of today, like what I don't really connect to in the same way about this book. And this is, you know, this is subjective. Like this is just me. Like you know.
I disagree.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that I don't really like Dickinsonian stories. Like I don't love like the, you know, they're not magical realism, but the way that you like go through this one life with a boy against the world and all these extraordinary things happen to him in his ordinary existence. I'm thinking of other examples that I've read for this video series and just in my own life, but like Heart's Invisible Furies didn't really hit for me. It's interesting, like the orphan boy against the world is not entirely my shit.
Maybe that's where I connect with it, because I kind of like, I prefer to know, and maybe I'm a little more traditional, I want to know early on who I'm rooting for, who is the lead, who is the protagonist, whose journey are we following.
I like a family story.
Yeah.
Like or a community, like, you know, Secret History
That's
again.
why you like the
college. The found kind of family of them. I love friends in like the corrections. Like I love the interpersonal relationships.
But don't you think that there's an aspect of the Goldfinch that is him finding his found family in all these different places and, and continuously looking? I think maybe that's where I connect to it, is like I have lived a good amount of life and have lived in all these different places and thrown in these situations that were a little crazy, or, you know, a little insane at the time, but then finding those people and finding my home, that maybe is where I like the Goldfinch a bit. I don't know. I feel like,
look, it's a Booker Prize, Pulitzer Prize winning, but people love it, and I love the writing is unbelievable.
You can't deny Donna's writing ever.
Nor would I ever attempt. I mean, she's the greatest. I just sit around hoping, wishing, praying that we'll get another book from her soon.
I need another Donna Tartt book.
Desperate. I think like that's what would heal the world right now. Another Donna Tartt book.
Donna, we need you. Please.
We like desperately.
No, we do.
Desperately.
We really do. God, that book is so good, though. I just think.
When did you read it for the first time?
I think I was 17 or 18 when I read it, and maybe
I think that's a good age to read it.
I do think that's a good age to read it too. I think that maybe vacillating between Theo and Boris, and like that, having where I thought both of them live inside of me at that time, maybe also is why it hit so much.
Yeah.
I wonder if I did a reread, if it still, I think it would still hold up. I love that book. I'm standing by it. And I love Secret History too. I just think, I don't know, there's certain books that bring me back to where I was at a certain place in time. Like I just remember like Beautiful Ruins, which I've talked to you about, reading that on the beach in Italy, a similar vibe of that book. I don't know. I think the environment of where I read a book also impacts of how much I love it.
No, environment, also like time of life. Yeah. And like, you know, I think a lot about one of Donna went to Bennington with Bret Easton Ellis, who we both love. And reading Less Than Zero at about 18 years old, when I had a lot of friends who were actively in addiction in a very, I mean, I didn't grow up in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills, but I grew up in a very privileged part of Providence, Rhode Island, and just a lot of access to drugs. And I, reading that at 18 felt like, I mean, it goes back to what we were saying this whole time, just feeling incredibly seen. Yeah. And I don't know, I feel like Less Than Zero is the kind of book, like if I read it for the first time at my big age of 32, I wouldn't connect to. And I mean, maybe I'd feel like a nostalgia for, but that was a really fundamental reading experience for me.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. I want to shout out Bret Easton Ellis now. I mean, Less Than Zero and Rules of Attraction are truly I feel like could have definitely been in this top 5.
Yeah, I mean, he's remarkable.
Rules of Attraction, I remember reading that at a time where I was just starting to experiment too. Sexually, well, experiment with men. Sexually.
That's
Yeah.
No,
We were experimenting a lot earlier than that, but feeling very seen in that story, and feeling like just, oh God, he writes about it so beautifully, and so. And the movie is one of the few movies I think, to me, holds up to the book.
Yeah, I really
think
enjoyed it.
That movie is incredible. But yes, I remember reading that at a very pivotal time too. That that it just connects at a certain period, at a certain point where I feel seen, I feel understood, and I'm like, there was a reason why I read it in this time.
They say never meet your heroes, but you've met Bret Easton Ellis. What is it like to hang out with him?
Incredible. It's everything I would have ever wanted. He's eccentric. He's super smart, very perceptive, and I'll never forget what he said to me when I left his apartment. It is truly ingrained.
What did he say?
Into me. He said, I left, we had a meeting to talk about writing, and I left, and then I hear the door open back up, and he goes, Lukas, and I turn around, and he goes, try to be happy. I was like, what? He's like, just try to be happy. And it really stuck with me.
And that was recent.
It was recent. First of all, afterwards, I sat in the car and looked at myself in the mirror and was like, am I happy? Do I not seem happy? Am I okay? But I think I get what he was saying. I get it's such a, such simple advice, but sometimes those like few line, and I talk about some of them in the book, like these 2-word pieces of wisdom that I get from people I look up to, like something so simple and not, flowery or overly sentimental, can really stick with you.
There are some others in the book. Anyone you want to touch on? I
think Jennifer Coolidge is telling me who cares.
Yeah.
It's just like 2 words that are something that I try to keep remembering when I spiral into these places where I think I had blown up my life, or I'm never going to be in love again, or I'm never going to work again. I'm never gonna be this happy. So I don't know. Like there's all these moments where I'm just, and I do feel like in the moment they feel so important, but by the next day I usually forget it. And it's like it's not life or death in most of these situations. So who cares?
Yeah. The final book that you brought was the Poisonwood Bible.
Yes.
By Barbara Kingsolver. When did you read this for the first time?
I read this one in Vancouver, actually. An actor had recommended I read it. There's another book that I was thinking about from childhood I love called The Perfect Score. They also made into a movie about these kids that try to break in to get the SAT test.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the movie's not great, but the book's really
it's like
good.
Justin Long or something, right?
Yeah. It's told from the perspective of all the different characters. So every chapter is a different character. In this book, the Poisonwood Bible, it's told from every member of the family that goes on this trip to Africa that it turns out to be a little bit, I don't want to give anything away for people who
They're not
read
exactly
it.
welcome there.
They're not exactly welcome in this situation, we'll say that. And a lot of things unfold that are quite haunting. But she does such a good job of telling the perspective of all, there's like 8 people in this family, and each person has such a clear voice and a perspective, and some of them don't align with other people's perspective of what's happening in the situation. And that's so funny. Like every person can have a completely wildly different take on what's going on in their version of reality. She writes incredibly, just like her, I'm a big sensorial guy too, so like her descriptions of things I'm so in. This was another one that was, I think, is also, they're still working on adapting as well into a HBO show.
Oh, wow.
I think Amy Adams was attached to play
Amazing.
the mother.
Blond.
Yeah. There's no roles for me, but I'm desperately hoping that they do this and do this one justice. But yeah, I'm a big Barbara Kingsolver fan as well.
I love how she plays with, memory, and I think about a lot is like the idea that even with siblings, you don't have the same parents. Like everybody's parent has a different parent, because the relationships are so different. You've now shared your book with most of your family.
Yeah.
Are there any instances that they just remember it totally differently, something in the book?
My brothers and I had all the very shared, aligned experiences, and all my brothers confidently could say that was exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, not so much.
Yeah.
And I totally understand why.
And it's something you write about, too.
Yeah.
That
My mom was rewriting the truth constantly. I mean, I think I love my mom, my best friend, the most incredible, amazing woman in the world, but I do believe maybe some of my lying I learned from her.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely understand why she would lie. She would do it to protect herself, to protect her family, to rewrite this version of a family that she wanted and had always dreamed of. And so for her to read the book, I think that she had told herself such a different narrative for so long that she wanted to hold on to that, and had to really hear from me and my brothers that, like, no, that's 100% accurate to what happened. And then I think the denial went away and she can acknowledge it. And I think it's just really, it's hard. I think some of the stuff, especially with her kids in this book, is the hardest thing for her.
Yeah. The title of this book is I Wrote This for Attention, which you're now getting a lot of attention. I mean, you're starting to do your press circuit. Every day on Instagram stories, someone new and excited. Like, so many
nice.
people are, you've had such
really
an
nice.
outpouring of support from.
It's really cool.
What is it like to be getting the attention that you wrote it for?
It's the same thing that I write about in the book. I'm constantly contradicting this feeling that I have about attention, is desperately yearning for validation, attention, praise, being told that I've done a good job, but also being very scared of it, scared to be misunderstood or to hurt anybody or hurt my people that I love with the book. So I think it's this push and pull that I feel with attention is I both desperately want it and desperately hate it, and I'm afraid of it, but I love it at the same time. I don't know, it's the core of this book. It's exactly what I'm feeling in this moment of I love it, but I hate it. I want it, but I want to hide. So this kind of attention, though, I feel is good.
Is it, in the words of Bret Easton Ellis, are you happy?
I am happy. I'm content. Happiness is, I don't know. I don't think
Elusive.
Happiness is hard for me.
Okay.
Loving myself is hard for me. That feels like a little too hard. But being content and feeling joy, yeah. Happiness is harder.
If you could play any literary character, who would it be on screen?
I'm going to go with Boris.
It would be Boris.
I want to go with Boris from Goldfinch, yep.
Okay. I really like that for you.
I would love to.
And who is your literary crush? It's also Boris.
It's Boris. Fiction or nonfiction?
Either one. Both.
Literary crush, I think I'm going to go with Bret Easton Ellis.
Oh, I meant character, but
Okay,
like
great.
you can, but also.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
It's just Bret.
Just Bret.
Bret, if you're watching this.
Hit me up. Yeah, he's very happy. Jafar. No, I don't know. I don't know with this one.